All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's edition of Roundabout Sports, presented by Filthy Games Room and Interstate 70 Sports Media, where our passion is our profession. It's another hot one, folks. After a day of absolute downpour here in the St. Louis area, I'm the maestro Jeremy Karp. It is July 17th, 2024, and I'm alongside my dear friend Hollywood James Knox. James, how we doing, buddy?
Doing well, Jeremy. Yeah, I hope everybody's doing well in the St. Louis area. Seeing some of the video out of that was crazy. Seeing I-64 shut down with all of the flooding on the interstate was pretty nuts. You know, there are some places in St. Louis that you're used to flooding, 141 in Chesterfield, and even I-55. The further you get down closer to the river, like into SoCo and down into Jeffco in that area. But man, yeah, we've got some of the downpours today that you guys got yesterday, but nothing to the extent that you guys and/or Branson got this morning as well.
Yeah, I saw a lot of definitely a lot of shutdown roads. I saw a dam breach in
Nashville, Illinois. Saw that.
Nashville, Illinois. So yeah, it's crazy. So before we start the show, you can find us on Spotify, on our YouTube channel. Believe it or not, they are saying that our lovely friend Elon Musk is saying that we need a premium account on X now to stream on their platform. So, there goes that. But there is something I kind of want to start the show off with, and it's a bit of an emotional one. So a few days ago, a very dear friend of mine, known as Jeffrey Hyde, passed away suddenly at the age of 41. He was known in promotions such as CHWA, Dynamo, GCW, and he was just a familiar face in the St. Louis wrestling area. He was one of the first guys that I got to know when I started out at Dynamo Pro about 3 or so years ago. And look, you meet this guy, he has an intimidating frame. He's a big dude, but he was one of the kindest souls you could ever meet. And, I've shared on my Facebook page and on the I-70 Sports Media Facebook page, there is a GoFundMe set up for his family that Crystal from Dynamo Pro Wrestling put together. So big kudos to her. So yes, it is. And thoughts go out, of course, to Babs, his Barbie. But you all know her as Babs, who was together with Jeff, with his family and friends at this time. So definitely just wanted to get that out of the way because Jeff was a dear friend who, definitely will be missed. So with that being said, folks, the show must and will go on. And James, the first question I have for you is this. Will the National League, aside from last year, ever win an All-Star Game again?
No. And look, before we even looked it up, we didn't realize they won last year.
I didn't realize it until we started the show that they had won last year. I personally thought
it's been a run of American League dominance, and I think a lot of that was before it was because of the pitching, obviously. Last night, I really thought the National League had a shot to win. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani gets things going with a 3-run home run. The American League wasted no time in answering whatsoever.
No.
And I thought it was really cool, though, that when you look at it, the MVP of the game was not somebody we expected. Duran from the Red Sox ends up being the MVP of the game. It was kind of cool to see, I guess, refreshing to see. I remember when the Major League Baseball All-Star Game for me was like must-see viewing. And I think all All-Star games, with the exception of the NHL, because I really like the 3-on-3, I really like the skills comp. I think it's kind of more, I guess, has better pace to it. But just in terms of the All-Star game last night, I think the reason I didn't tune in also is because Helsley decided not to pitch, which I thought was a really good decision. there weren't any Cardinal position players that I was, interested in watching because there were none there. So, on most years I'm tuned in, but last night was kind of just a fleeting moment. I had it on to see how Paul Skeens would do against the likes of Aaron Judge and Juan Soto and those guys. But otherwise, no, the National League will never beat them again, though.
Probably.
I don't see it. Offensive talent-wise, I really think the American League is better off. Now, I think that the National League will have more pitching in the future, but, if you cannot score runs, as we know as Cardinal fans, if you cannot score runs, you cannot possibly win a baseball game. You can tie, I guess, but
right. Well, I'll say this. I mean, no, I had the All-Star Game on as background noise. I don't like the jersey designs. I miss when you could really distinguish players for their teams.
Right.
There just didn't seem to be any fan interest in the All-Star Game this year. And I will say the opposite could be said for the Home Run Derby. I really did enjoy the Home Run Derby this year.
Right.
I was really pulling for Bobby Witt Jr. And he and Teoscar Hernandez put on a really fun finale. I thought it was cool seeing Michael Buffer there. I don't know. The Home Run Derby has been really impressive the past few years. The All-Star Game has not. And, we talked about in the past on this show about the watering down of the Pro Bowl and how now it's just become kind of like a skills challenge.
Right.
And the NBA All-Star Game is just, scores of 140 to 130.
Yeah, nobody plays defense until the fourth quarter.
Exactly. And then you have, honestly, one of the most unappreciated ones, that being the NHL All-Star Game.
I think that's my favorite one. I really do. I think because
the weekend is fun. The All-Star weekend for the NHL is fun.
Right.
It's just not talked about enough.
No, and I think you're right. The skills comp kind of leads itself into the NHL All-Star Game with it being 3-on-3. It's kind of weird. You go back, and I hope that the Home Run Derby doesn't become the way of the NBA Slam Dunk Contest. Because growing up for me, I mean, Dominique Wilkins, Clyde the Glide Drexler, the year that Jordan participated. And I think that's what the Home Run Derby for me kind of lacked, like I told you. And this is the honest to God truth. Once I realized that none of the four I picked to be in the semifinals were going to make it there, my betting interest was gone, especially considering I had Pete Alonso winning the thing. And it looked honest to me like he didn't even try. But, there's the part of me also that I'm glad he lost, because I don't think anybody in St. Louis or anybody in the league can stand Pete Alonso. Nonetheless, I just hope that I think Major League Baseball needs to do more in terms of promoting their stars, because if you're going to continue to have an all-star game where there's the only flash is the night before in the Home Run Derby, I think you have to do a little bit more promotion. Other than Paul Skeens, who we've all heard about this year, nobody outside of Los Angeles knows who Teoscar Hernandez is.
Yeah.
Bobby Witt Jr., he's the face of kind of the Kansas City Royals right now, so people know who he is. But still, a young star. He's super athletic. He's a good-looking guy. You should have him and Paul Skeens posted all over commercials. All over the MLB website, silly ESPN skits. I don't care what it is, but you need to promote your guys better.
Yeah. And my dad was saying here, he chimed in, and folks, be sure to send in your comments as well. When he was growing up, it was the National League that was dominant.
Right.
We looked it up. I think it was, let me double check. Since 1988, the American League has been 28-7-1, whereas from 1950 to 1987, the National League went 33-8-1.
That's crazy.
So it literally went from one extreme to the other. And we got Chuck tuning in. Thank you so much, Chuck. He says, quote, "The MLB is the worst at promoting its stars. I love my Red Sox, but I'll accept today's fans, football too, are fans of individuals and not teams."
Right. And I think that's true. I mean, a lot of people are like, for instance, when it comes to, excuse me, when it comes to the NBA, like I'm more of a Jason Tatum guy. Why? Because he's a St. Louis guy, or I'll follow Ja Morant because he went to Murray State. Am I a Grizzlies fan? I've got a couple hoodies, but I don't have any Celtics gear. It's more of a player-based fandom instead of cheering on the uniform. And it's like, I think I think there's a lot of Cardinal fans have become that way too. Not only are you a Cardinal fan, but you look at somebody like an Adolis Garcia. I couldn't help but cheer for him during the home run derby or when he got up to bat. Or you look at somebody like Marcelo Zuna, who was also in the home run derby. You kind of cheer for him in a contest like that because why? He played in St. Louis? Because there's a tie there. There's a connection there.
Well, that's why whenever Cardinal fan or former Cardinals come to St. Louis, they get standing ovations.
Right. I mean, and that's kind of, you can be both. It's not necessarily, there's no exclusivity there. But, I know, and I don't know St. Louis football fans. Obviously, you're a Browns fan, and I had been a Rams fan for, gosh, I guess since the late 80s, early 90s, only because my mom was born in Southern California, and that kind of came with her. But, cheering on those guys, and I'm still a Rams fan, even though that's taboo in the city of St. Louis simply because the owner's an idiot. But let's see what we got here. We got another comment from Chuck here. I wish the MLB would go back to having a skills comp, maybe yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think it would be a little bit more difficult to judge other than maybe because, I mean, unless you're going to do like a home to home, like a sprint around the bases. I'd like to see an Ellie De La Cruz in that, or some of these other guys like Trey Turner that are really fast. I don't know how deep you could go with that. I mean, I guess you could, have maybe a throwing competition, like based on if you hit targets, similar to like a cross between what they do with the NFL and the quarterback challenge and the NHL skills comp where you're shooting at targets in the net. I mean, it would be interesting to see what kind of skills they would come up with or what kind of competitions that they would bring to light.
Absolutely.
Certainly bunting wouldn't be one of them. Not anymore.
No. Well, James, come to think about it, we were talking about all the different All-Star games, and we have perspectives from basically from the MLB point of view, from the NFL point of view, NBA point of view. I think we should get a guy on who has a great NHL point of view. And, he's very well known here in the St. Louis area. He's a television personality for the St. Louis Blues Hockey Club. He's also available for MC and hosting duties in STL and nationwide. You can find him on jasonrooney.com/host, and we'll be getting more into that later. And he's also a big guy when it comes to voiceover work. Ladies and gentlemen, the man that you see in this picture joining us today here on Roundabout Sports as well, the one, the only, Jason Rooney.
Hey, guys. How are you, man? Thanks so much for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Of course. How's it going, Jason?
Doing good, man. Love the show so far. I love your guys' knowledge on all things sports, and I like the casualness of it, too. It kind of feels like, I didn't know about the show before Jeremy reached out to me, so I love the casualness of you guys and how you kind of talk. It's just buddies talking about sports because this is what we do. We talk about baseball. We switch to football. We switch to hockey. We go back and forth. We talk about our teams and then usually what we hate and then what we love, right?
Right.
Absolutely. That's the way to go about it. So I want to say this. First thing to you, Jason. It wasn't too long ago that the Winter Classic was here in St. Louis.
Right.
Now, what was that experience like, just being a part of all that?
Well, I'd love to tell you, but I wasn't around for that. I didn't start with the Blues until the 2022-23 season, so that was before me. So I missed out on that, which was unfortunate. But even more so than missing out on the Winter Classic was missing out on the Stanley Cup celebrations in 2019, which would have been unbelievably awesome.
I talked to Jeremy Boyer. It's funny you bring that because I talked to Jeremy Boyer a few weeks ago on the show, And, we showed the picture of him with the Stanley Cup in front of everybody. I mean, it was hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million fans just flooding downtown St. Louis.
Jeremy is an awesome guy, as you already know. I don't know what his Instagram and his socials are, but if you're not following him, please follow him because he has great updates and great posts and stuff too. And just an all-around great guy. And interesting fun fact about Jeremy Boyer, who is the organ player for the St. Louis Blues and also the backup for the Cardinals, is his daughter, one of his daughters, Belle, is one of the Blue Crew cheerleaders for the St. Louis Blues. She started last year, and she'll be continuing on for next season too. So that's a little fun fact. Inside info.
I remember he mentioned that to me, and he made himself feel old knowing that one of his kids was working with the Blues Crew now.
No, and it's not hard to do. The older we get, man, we just it just happens. But Jeremy's super awesome dude. And the cool thing about Jeremy is too, I can't remember what section he's in, but his organ is up in the 300s at the very top. If you find him, you could go up almost all the way up there and wave and say hi and chat with him for a second in between plays or, before or after the game too. And I'm sure he would appreciate that too. So if you're around, go look him up next season and go, climb the rafters and go say hello.
Oh, absolutely. So, gentlemen, the first thing I wanted to bring up in the realm of hockey is actually the fact that, last year the Blues, it's crazy because they didn't make the playoffs. But they exceeded expectations because, let's face it, we didn't really think the Blues were going to do much of anything, let alone the fact that they still hung in there until pretty much the last week of the season. And so first thing I have to say is you take a look, and they just announced a few days ago that Torrey Krug has been diagnosed with pre-arthritic changes in his left ankle. And in about 6 to 8 weeks, he's going to get reevaluated. If he has surgery, he's going to be out all year. James, I'm going to start with you. What is your take on all this?
Well, ultimately, the injury that he's facing now is something that he's dealt with. Apparently, for a little bit, he had a broken ankle earlier in his career, and he's kind of dealt with changes in the ankle, and now, of course, being diagnosed with this. And I don't want to be the conspiracy theorist. It just really comes at a good time because they wanted to trade him last year. Well, you're not going to trade him now, are you? But I also, on that same note, I wonder if Army knew this, and that's why the contract offer and signing of Ryan Suter. Because what it does, it gives you another left-handed defenseman who's a veteran in that lineup. He's not going to play the power play per se, but that's what you have Scott Prunovich for if he can stay healthy. Ultimately, I think what you're looking at is Torrey Krug. I mean, look, Father Time is undefeated. I don't care what sport you're in. And Krug at times been an Iron Man. He's not somebody who misses a lot of time. But you're in a situation now where if you do lose Torrey Krug for the season, the only silver lining is that you can put him on LTIR and perhaps use that money to maybe strengthen your top 6 forwards if somebody's out there that's available or via trade at the deadline. I just hate it for Torrey because he's had kind of an up and down career since coming to St. Louis, and of course trying to get acclimated to a team that had beat his previous team in the Stanley Cup, and just trying to get kind of acclimated to the team and the style of play. He's had his ups, but unfortunately, I believe there's been more downs to his Blues career than what maybe management and his fans would have liked.
Jason, what do you think on all this?
Well, I mean, off the top, yeah, it's a loss. However, if you look at last season, which was an improvement over the previous, 2022-23, you had some defensive problems. Goals that we allowed were just it was getting ridiculous. So there were some adjustment made in that season, and then some more, obviously, last season. And our numbers were better for defense last season, namely Parenko really stepping up last season. His numbers were a lot better. And we're paying him a lot of money, so it's good that he kind of stepped up. Also, Colton, a really awesome guy, by the way. Super nice, super friendly dude. So you want him to do well. You want him to perform well, for the team, and obviously that's what he wants to do. However, saying all that, even if we lose Krug for all of next season, we're still in a season and a realm of change. You've seen it with the announcement of Army retiring or leaving in a few seasons and Steen taking over. So not only do you have player changes, but you also have some management changes, obviously managerial changes last year as well, too. So I feel like, all said, I think the Blues are in a good position because they're already changing a lot of things, too. And so this doesn't throw their entire plan out of whack, in my opinion.
I look at what's going on with the Blues defense. So right now, okay, we're gonna include Krug on this because he's still, he's not ruled out for the season. They're still determining what the official length of everything is for him. But you have 8 defensemen on the Blues who are typically battling for 6 spots. And when you look at it, I mean, Matthew Cassell and, Justin Falk, Colton Parayko, they're in. They're going to stick around. Tyler Tucker he's 24 years old, and Joseph is going to stick around a while as well. So these guys are going to alternate from the AHL to the NHL. This leaves you with Nick Leddy and Torrey Krug.
Well, it also leaves you with Ryan Suter, too. Don't forget that they brought in that veteran left-handed defenseman. And here's the thing with Matt Kessel. If you're asking me personally, yes, I think Matt Kessel should be in the lineup every night. I think he proved last year that he can even log top 6 minutes if you needed him to. But, I mean, I think that you got Tyler Tucker. You got obviously you bring in the Joseph brothers, and we'll get to the additions here along with Texier and Radek Faksa, which ultimately made the team tougher, which kind of goes to Jason's point. A lot of those goals 2 years ago were tap-ins, and you can't leave your goaltender in Binnington back there to kind of fend for himself. I think we need to be stronger in front of the net. You get some of that in a forward presence now, other than somebody like Braden Shin, who has to kind of carry the team on his shoulders and fight everybody every time there's a mix-up or, anything on the ice. Yeah, don't forget, you've got guys that are, and don't forget Prunovich as well on the left side. And really that's where you're going to have to try to find the minutes. If for some reason Krug misses part of, if not the entire season, that's where you have to look to. So you've got Suter, you've got Prunovich, you're going to have Tyler Tucker. I can't remember if Joseph is right-handed or left-handed back there. I wish that what is this, Steenberg or whatever his name is, the Swedish defenseman that was at the prospects camp a couple of weeks ago, just kind of figure skating with the puck out at the blue line, looks very promising as a left-handed defenseman as well. So yeah, I mean, they've got depth back there, but I also believe that Ryan Suter played 19 minutes a game last year for the Dallas Stars, so he could be a top 4 defenseman too if you need one.
Jason, what do you think with this whole thing where, because having depth is always important. It's not that the Blues are in a bad situation. It's just now you're looking at yourself, and now that you have to reevaluate Krug in a few weeks, and training camp's going to be here before you know it, you have to ask yourself, who is the odd man out,
That's a good question. I will say that watching Tucker last season, the kid has some spark to him. He has some aggressiveness to him in his style of play. He has passion that I saw night after night. So he's a guy that is he going to play every game? Probably not at this point. But he's young enough to develop a little bit more. And I really think in the future he could really be something. And he could be a really strong defender for the St. Louis Blues, I think, if they keep him around and his play continues to improve. Because, it's just the passion and the aggressiveness, especially for defensemen, are just huge. And I think he has that, and I think he's hungry. So I think he's the player to watch, in my opinion, as far as, some of the younger guys.
And I think we saw that a couple of years ago, too, when Tyler Tucker when he first came up and got his look under Berube, you could tell that, and he's tough as nails. I mean, you need a defenseman like that. I mean, a lot of these defensemen that you see now, like the Cole McCarrs, and those guys are they're great skaters. They're fancy. They can, reminds me a lot of a Sandis Ozolinsh, to be honest with you. But you need somebody who can run them into the boards and be strong along the boards as well. And especially in the defensive zone, that's something I believe the Blues have really missed, maybe since somebody like I would say a Jay Bouwmeester, but maybe even far back as a Barrett Jackman on the left side, having a left side defenseman where you're not going to go to that side of the ice because you don't want to get plastered into the boards.
I feel like there's a lot of physicality that's been missing on the defensive side for the Blues. Teams don't seem to be intimidated, being caught against the wall with them because they don't seem to. It's not that I don't know the best way to describe it, but I kind of like how you put it in the sense of a guy like a Bouwmeester or a Barrett Jackman who, there was people that did not want to go to that side. And the physicality just doesn't seem like it's there right now.
The problem is, too, and I'm sure Jason can speak on this as well. He sees it every night. Look, a lot of that's being ushered out of the game, too. I mean, it used to be, and back in my day, you used to let the players police it on the ice. A lot of the stuff that happens now would not happen because you had a Bob Probert or a Ty Domi or somebody was ready to come over the boards and they were going to pound you into an oblivion, turn your face into a catcher's mitt. It doesn't happen that way anymore. You look at somebody the wrong way and you're getting a penalty called on you. And I think there are some referees that will let it go. But, I was listening to Kerry Frazier on a podcast the other day and they were talking about this. And he said that at least 65% of the penalties that are called now in terms of roughing would not have been called when he was on the ice.
Yeah, you know what? I would say that too. There's been a large lack of physicality. And I think to your point, James, it's a league-wide thing. I mean, this is the way hockey's moving, less fighting, more skill-based action. Okay, I get that. However, the way that hockey is played, there has to be a physicality to it. Now, last season, I think you saw some of that physicality in waves when the Blues would go in a stretch. And they had that passion, they had that drive, they were scoring goals, they were playing well. You saw the physicality was also there. You just saw it. The crowd got into it because there'd be bigger hits. There might be a fight or two. There'd be more rough play. When there's not, the team's playing a little bit flat-footed. They're not scoring. They're giving a lot of attempts to the other team. And that was the thing that I always wanted to know. Like, man, if they could just, the game they played last night, they were so physical, they won, and they came back and won, versus 2 or 3 nights later, or maybe the next homestand later, they're flat-footed, they're not playing physical, and, it's 4-1 in the second period. So, I think that's a key to it. But, it's not the physicality. I love the fact that you mentioned Bob Probert because, what a goon that guy was back in the day. He's just out there to fight somebody. Is he going to score a goal? No. Is he going to get an assist? Maybe by some random act of God that might happen. He's there to push people around. That's just what his job was.
Yeah, and Jamie. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, similarly, Tony Twist for the Blues obviously was our answer to that in a way. He's a remarkable guy.
Jamie Rivers tells a really funny story that he had hit Jeremy Roenick really hard or put him into the boards or whatever. And so the line change, puck goes out of play or whatever. And here he sees Bob Probert climb over the boards. And he's looking back at the bench and just begging for somebody to come take a spot on the ice. And he said, thankfully, the change was made as soon as they dropped the puck and Tony Twist came over and he jumped off the ice quicker than he jumped on. But yeah, that kind of goes back to it. And, you're right. The consistency of being able to play that way every night. And Jeremy, you talked about how the Blues barely missed the playoffs in a year that nobody expected them to even be there. Unfortunately, those nights came against teams like the Columbus Blue Jackets and the San Jose Sharks and the Chicago Blackhawks. If you win the games you're supposed to win and keep those teams below you, the Blues, yes, they would have gotten in the playoffs. Would they have gone very far? We don't know. But we've seen teams in St. Louis, whether it's been the Cardinals, Blues, whatever, just get into the playoffs and you never know what happens. And if they play consistently night to night, who knows?
That's true.
Bennington's one of the hottest goaltenders in the league. When you get into the playoffs, you can ride a goaltender.
Well, you bring up, and this is a great segue for it. You bring up the Chicago Blackhawks, like games last season, and something really crazy happened not too long ago with the Blackhawks, and yes, it was weird enough seeing the hometown kid Pat Maroon, go to basically go to Tampa Bay, then Minnesota, then he went to Boston. I'm like, okay, well, how could it get any worse? You really shouldn't have asked that, because then Pat Maroon goes to Chicago, of all places. Guys, first impressions, Nick asked why was he brought on? Was he brought in to mentor guys? What are your thoughts here on Maroon heading to Chicago?
Jason, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Look, Pat Maroon is a veteran at this point. Guy has achieved so much in his I mean, let's face it, he hasn't been around forever. I mean, he's still a young guy. So I don't really know what the reasons are behind that. I mean, certainly his veteran status adds something to almost any team. And the real question I have for him is, the Blackhawks suck. I mean, look at the last two seasons, just terrible. They're looking for anything, to help them out at this point behind their start. So that veteran status, that Stanley Cup history with him, the leadership that he brings is a huge jump for the Chicago Blackhawks, especially looking at their roster these days, 100%. So if I'm management for the Blackhawks, that's a slam dunk all day, every day. What do you want? We'll pay it to you within reason, under cap, obviously. So this is a guy that's going to come in and going to be able to shake things up a little bit, give some leadership, or maybe some, they need some locker room leadership, maybe somebody to kind of take over or assist with how guys are relating to each other, how guys are playing, just how they're gelling with each other, and how to be or get back to a championship hockey team. I hope that doesn't happen. And I love Pat because Pat's from Oakville, which I lived in Oakville until 2 weeks ago. And I love him. But, I don't wish the Blackhawks success. I wish him success. But if he should, continue a run and win another Stanley Cup at some point while he's with Chicago, then we just have to take our hats off and throw him in, I guess.
Right.
I think I look at it too is I think it really is, and you're right. I mean, look at their roster. They're extremely young. They're going to teach a lot of these guys how to be professionals. And I honestly think maybe they'll bring him in to protect Connor Bedard a little bit. I don't know. Patty, I mean, he's a hometown hero, obviously. But, Nick, he asked if he's chasing money. I don't think it's that at all. I mean, I think Pat just likes playing hockey. I think that's what it comes down to.
And it wasn't that big a deal either. Like, it's not like it was a 4-year,
Right.
it was a pretty good.
I mean, it could be a transitional thing too. Again, I mean, you're teaching a locker room full of young kids how to be professionals in the NHL. I think that's all it is. I really think it's a chemistry move. You're going to help those kids grow up a little bit, and he still gets to play hockey. I mean, hell, it doesn't get much better than that. If your job is going to a field or a rink, and that's how geez, playing a game you love, we'd all be so lucky.
I agree. Quick halfway point, folks. I want to give a quick word in. First off, thank you so much, folks, for tuning in to Roundabout Sports, presented by Filthy Games Room. So, for those wondering, Filthy Games Room is located at 3479 Newtown Boulevard in St. Charles, Missouri, right off Interstate 370. Let me tell you something, folks. It is a fantastic place, chock full of the largest collection in the metro area of retro and modern video games, spanning from it all the way. You want to go back to the Magnavox Odyssey, all the way up to the PlayStation 5. That's what we have here, folks. And, on top of that, you go in the front of the store, they got a whole plethora of arcade machines. Like I said, they got Nintendo, Sega, Sony, anything. They got all kinds of it. And you got, on top of that, they do console repairs as well. They're open from Wednesday through Saturday, 12 to 8. Ben Bizzle is the man in charge, and it is his passion project, and he's done a fantastic job. Go there, say hi to him, say hi to Ari, to Jacob, to so many other amazing folks. And I tell you, you won't regret the experience. That's Filthy Games Room, proud partner of Interstate 70 Sports Media and a sponsor of Roundabout Sports. With that said,
I can't play college football 25 on an Atari. I'm sorry, Jeremy.
No, I can't play football on Atari. Okay, so and I have just plain football, and what I have here, I got one. You got the little handheld Mattel games from the 70s. We got a couple of those here at home too. So, folks, it's myself, the Maestro, along with Hollywood, James Knox, and Jason Rooney, and I know Hollywood's going to be hitting the road in just a few minutes, but we were talking about a lot of things happening with hometown kids and doing what they love. Okay, so I want to backtrack just a little bit. Let's go back to the NFL draft this year. Now, coming out of Mizzou, you had Cody Schrader from Mizzou. Cody Schrader had a fantastic season. I mean, he has himself.
Is he still on the 90-man roster for the Niners, even though he got drafted by the Battlehawks today?
And that's what I was going to get at.
My bad. Sorry. Bury the lead.
He had 1,627 yards and 14 touchdowns last year. He was a Doak Walker Award finalist, a Heisman finalist, a first-team All-American by the AP and CBS Sports. And yes, so he went undrafted, but he signed with the San Francisco 49ers to their 90-man. But today he was drafted by the St. Louis Battlehawks.
God, I hope he leaves the NFC West. As a Rams fan, I don't want to see him.
Well, and that's the thing. So the interesting thing about this whole situation, because he was not exclusively drafted by an NFL team, he was eligible. Right now, the Battlehawks have Schrader's UFL rights, and the 49ers have a certain extent of his rights in the NFL. He has two options. He can either appeal his draft for the UFL, so where he would still be with the 49ers, or he'd stick around and play for the Battlehawks. I'm going to be honest. Look, there were 5 NFL players picked in the first 13 picks of the UFL draft, and it would be hard-pressed for me to not see Cody Schrader wearing that Battlehawk uniform.
Their draft rules make my brain hurt, quite frankly. The UFL, with all due respect, love the Battlehawks, love the league. Their draft rules made my head hurt. I was just
most of their rules make my head hurt. Like, the majority of the league can make my head hurt. But you know what? It's football in St. Louis. And, I know Jason sure believes that could cause the law.
What's funny is I was at the very first XFL game in Las Vegas. I lived in Las Vegas for 17 years. And so I was in the media. And so we got tickets to the very first game. And, we sit down at Sam Boyd Stadium where UNLV Rebels play.
Yep.
Getting ready. I'm like, okay, football. I don't know what this is about, but this should be fun. And next thing you know, two guys were running, towards the center field to grab the ball, and I'm like, what is happening here? And that's where I found out about He Hate Me.
Yep, Rod Smart.
I've loved it.
Good old Rod Smart.
That's exactly the first thing when he said that. That's what I was going to bring up was He Hate Me.
Yeah.
He freaking hate me.
So he wanted to play for the Carolina Panthers.
Okay, so and I want to get into he did. And I want to get a little bit more because I know Nick even said he's kind of lost at the whole situation. I know James we all are kind of confused by the whole situation about what with Cody Schrader. So right now he could spend all fall on an NFL practice squad before playing in his hometown for the spring UFL season. Basically, if he doesn't sign a contract with the 49ers or any NFL team during the season, he'll be able to play in the UFL next season. So basically, if he's a practice squad guy and he sticks around and then maybe makes an appearance or two, but as long as he doesn't sign like a ironclad NFL contract, he's eligible to play in the UFL. That's why Hakeem Butler kept coming back, because the Steelers never officially signed him to a contract. They just signed him to the practice squad,
It's very similar to AJ McCarron, because he was on the practice squad all year. The Bengals signed him. I think he started a game or backed up their backup, and then he asked the Bengals to be released so he could come back and play with the Battlehawks. So I think that's how it works, is obviously if you're not under contract from an NFL team, because they're not going to – if they have any idea of keeping you around for the future, they don't want you to go get hurt in another league, that as long as you're not under any kind of ironclad contract that he could come back and play for the Battlehawks. I don't know. I mean, the Niners are pretty deep at running back, especially with, McCaffrey's their starter, and then they've got a couple guys that are – so I don't know. I would think that you keep them around on the practice squad, but who knows?
Yeah. James, I know before you go, I got one last thing that I know we need to talk about.
Yes, sir.
And this is a big one. You are somebody who's played it early. What do you think about NCAA 25?
When I first fired it up, my wife was actually in the room videotaping because she was going to see if I was going to cry or not, if that tells you anything. So I had waited 11 years for this. It was like, watching your kid graduate from high school. I mean, look, I'll tell you right now, they knocked it out of the park. It's been everything look, I'm not necessarily a hardcore gamer, but when I do, it's all sports games. So MLB The Show, Madden, that stuff. Man, between this game and the next NHL game, those are the two games I've been looking forward to the most. So, but I would give it, so far so good. So far I give it a 10 out of 10. The one thing that I think we all expected when it happened on the early launch was the servers went down. That's how many people, I even wore my Alabama Crimson Tide polo on Tuesday or on Monday when it came out. So it's all hardcore.
Now I'm really glad you're about to leave for the night.
You love me, Jeremy.
On Roll Tide. So my wife went to University of Oregon. So, and she's from Portland. Okay. So I have a Duck sweatshirt and a T-shirt. Right. Anyway, probably 3 years ago, we're driving down to Florida from St. Louis. We're driving through Alabama. We're 2, 3, 4 hours in. It's time to stop, take a break. Let's get out and get some gas and get something to eat. So we're in the heart of Alabama. I walk into the gas station with my University of Oregon shirt on, and the looks I got were crazy. People were just, and then nobody was rude or mean or anything. Right. But one person did say, "Hey, not from around here, are you?" And then I realized when we're driving, and I noticed there's a Crimson Tide sticker or something on probably 90% of the vehicles around. I'm like, oh my gosh, this shirt. That's why I was getting those. So anyway, there you go. Roll Tide.
Well, I'll give you a real funny one. So I've got my one of my professors when I was in college. He went to Western Kentucky, got his bachelor's, and then he finished up with his master's at the University of Alabama. Well, his brother went to the University of Auburn. They do not talk to each other. They do not talk to each other at family get-togethers. They can't stand each other. And if you mention it around him, you can just kind of tell, like, his whole demeanor will change. And I'm like, I thought, of course, I live in Western Kentucky now. I grew up in Granite City. So, obviously I have no like real ties here to the state of Kentucky, other than this where I live and this where my wife lives. Is that so? It's kind of like with Kentucky and Louisville, like basketball wise, they hate each other. Football wise, they're both terrible. They're generally Alabama fans. So, when it comes down to it, like basketball wars and stuff like that, you'll have friends that are all UK. And if, they happen to be friends with somebody who's from the University of Louisville, they won't talk to them at all. It's the craziest thing. You would think you would have that. And it used to be that way with Missouri and Illinois basketball, but the fighting or the bragging rights game has kind of lost its luster in the past couple of years, because either Illinois has been really bad or Missouri's been really bad, and hopefully they can get back to it. But my goodness, you mentioned his brother, and it's like you ran over his dog or something. My goodness,
crazy.
Crazy.
Jeez.
But that goes to show you, like, all these stories you hear out of Alabama, like, well, they had a disagreement over the game and he shot him. Well, yeah, it does happen. So
it shows just how insanely passionate sports can be. That's the best way to put it. Okay. Well, James, I know personally when you'll be back.
Yep.
And I can't wait. But we'll keep it a surprise for now.
Yeah. Well, I was to say, when you're a sports official, and this is my softball time of the year, travel is stupid. So I've got a very busy month ahead of me, and I've got a huge 10-game showcase this weekend. So I will be off doing that, and I will be missing the fact that the Cardinals are coming back from the All-Star break, because this is the one time of year where there's no sports, and I can't stand it.
I know. Well, you hang tight, buddy. We love you, and I can't wait to see you soon, okay?
Jason, it was great to talk to you. Great to meet you. You guys have a great evening.
You too, buddy.
We will. Hollywood James Knox, folks, here on Roundabout Sports. All righty. Jason, so the first thing I have to ask you about personally is, what got you into working within the Blues organization?
So I started in radio. I was a radio DJ. I grew up here in St. Louis in the late 90s when I was just, blossoming into adulthood. I decided to move to Las Vegas for my radio career and start my radio career. So I did that. I worked in radio for many years and then got into voiceover work in there and then left radio. So I've been doing voiceover work since 2008 full time. So voiceover work is, for those that don't know exactly what that means for me, commercials, television promos, stuff for the internet, mostly commercials for me. So you might have heard me on the Wendy Williams show, the voice of the Wendy Williams show for 5 years. I was involved in doing voiceover for a sketch for Saturday Night Live. I've done tons of stuff for Disney, lots of major brands, CNN, ABC, CBS, television promos. I'm the voice of Y98 here in St. Louis. I'm the male voice. So I've been doing that stuff. That's what keeps me busy during the day. But since 2008, I've been working in my studio at my house, and I haven't done anything outside of my house. So I guess it was two and a half, 3 years ago now, I saw that they were doing open auditions for in-game hosts for the Blues. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is fantastic, because it's a live event. You're on camera and you're doing announcements. I've done that before. I've done, hundreds of thousands of events. It seems like hundreds of thousands, not really that many, but I've done tons of events in my career, stage announcements, working crowds, stuff like that. So I thought, how awesome would it be to be able to do that for the St. Louis Blues, which I've been following since I was 10 years old, right?
Right.
So I sent off a package to them and got a call back. And then we had a couple of interviews. I had to go in for an audition. And then I got hired for the 22-23 season and then worked last season as well. This position is kind of a season by season thing. So you're not really guaranteed. So I may not be back next season, depending on management. But the last 2 years have been fantastic. It's been a lot of fun being able to be at all the home games, to watch the action, be involved with the crowd, make all the friends with the fans and everybody that works there. Has been really fantastic.
That's wonderful. And quick shout out to our friends Assad and Herb Simmons, some amazing guys tuning in here this evening, talking with the great Jason Rooney. You talked about
sorry, I didn't give a shout out to my co-host Chelsea Haynes from Fox 2. So shout out to Chelsea. She's my co-host, and she does a fabulous job too. So
absolutely. So the next thing I wanted to ask, you talked about all the time you spent doing voiceovers. It seems like it comes so naturally to you. Why is that?
Probably because I've done it for, it seems like 100 years. You don't start out day one really knowing what you're doing. You build that up through the years, right?
Right.
So voiceovers really for the better part of 20 years, really, at this point. And after a while, you kind of just know what you're doing. You know what you can do as far as what your vocal range is, how you attack certain types of scripts, different tones that you might use that might be helpful for what the client wants. So It's just a muscle memory thing. I've been doing it for so long. It's just what I do. It's just like, I could say, well, Jeremy, you're on this podcast and you seem like it comes easy. Well, you prepare for it. You get your stats. You know what you're going to talk about. You know what I mean? You prepare for those things and then you do it. And that's what it is. So it's the same sort of thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, because in some way, shape, or form, I've been doing podcasting for practically a decade, if not more now. So, which I have to agree to your point. It feels like 100 years sometimes. It's kind of like me with writing. It just feels like I've been doing this stuff forever, that it's become a part of my daily routine.
Right.
So I totally get that. Was there that certain point where you considered it? What would you consider to be your big break into the business of media, voiceovers? I mean, you mentioned some of the stuff you did, which is all of it's fantastic. Was there something that just kind of caught your eye and was like, wow, I can't believe I got to this?
There's probably a couple of things. Being featured on Saturday Night Live for that sketch was one that was a real career-defining thing for me, because look, I grew up, and a lot of us in middle school, high school watched Saturday Night Live. I mean, that's what I did. That was what we did every Saturday night, and then went to school on Monday and talked about the sketches and laughed about it and stuff, right? So these were guys I idolized. Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman, John Lovitz, all these guys, and I was lucky enough to be able to interview or meet all those guys later on in life, which was just unbelievably awesome to be able to, almost kind of touch these idols that you've looked up to for all these years and have interaction with them. But being able to be featured on Saturday Night Live was huge for me. It was just, it was just a sketch where it was like a movie trailer, and then they went and it was like an animated trailer. So I was the voiceover for the trailer, like, Home 2 coming now in theaters, or whatever, whatever we said. So my part wasn't really comedic. It was the other people who did that part. But just being able to be involved in that sketch for me, I'm like, look, this is the closest I'm ever going to get to being on that show. So I'll take it. I'll run with it and be happy for what this is. But, that was huge for me. Being able to do television promos for different networks is big, because it's something that I just find really fun. I just enjoy doing those sorts of things. So, over the years, I've done stuff for HGTV and E! and Travel Channel, CNN, lots of others too. But that's really fun. But there really wasn't a make or break moment for me. Really, there wasn't one thing like, okay, made it. It was just a grinding it out, doing auditions, because the work of voiceover is auditioning, really.
Mm-hmm.
What I do every day, in and out throughout the day, I'm doing auditions for things. Then sometimes people come back and they want to hire you, which is fantastic. But the auditioning is really the legwork that you have to do to work. So when you do that every day, slowly things start coming in. You're doing small jobs here or there. Then you might get something that's big, or sometimes things have a big budget and you make a good amount of money, but they're not really prestigious. Sometimes you do things that are a little bit more prestigious, but the money's not as big for those too. So, but they're both fun in each of their own different ways. But there's not really one moment that made it. It was just staying the course, staying committed, working hard, and trying to make it.
Okay. I was gonna say, I mean, there's a lot of moments. The SNL one is what really gets me. Like, to be a part of, and you're still a young guy, so for Saturday Night Live to be a part of that, that's fantastic.
Well, what's crazy about that too, which I thought was just so funny. So I got the call for that from my agent, and he said, "Hey, you're going to do this thing for Saturday Night Live," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is fantastic." So we did it on, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday. We did the initial recording session of everything. Then Friday comes around, they say, "Hey, they want you back. They've got some revisions for the script that they're going to do." Okay, cool. Go in, do that. So Saturday rolls around. I'm like, I'm going to watch this tonight. I'm going to watch my thing. This is going to be fantastic. So about 9 o'clock, it was right at 9 p.m. Granted, the show goes on at, 10:30 here?
Right.
Right at 9 o'clock, I get a text from my agent saying, "Hey, are you at home? Can you do a session real quick right now?" I'm like, "Yeah." For what is this? Saturday Night Live. They have some changes. They got to do it real quick. I'm like, "Dude, the show goes on the air in like an hour." But they changed it.
But that's Saturday Night Live for you.
And by God, I still get residual checks from NBC for that to this day. Usually it's only for about 15 or 20 cents, but still.
I was, damn. I mean, that's what I get for my usual job. So, I mean, it is what it is. So you have a website, and it's jasonrooney.com/host.
Just go to jasonrooney.com. That's
or
my main.
jasonrooney.com, honestly. Yep, there it is, jasonrooney.com. So, I see some of the places it says some of the businesses. We have McDonald's, we have ABC, Target, NBC, Walmart, HBO. I mean, that and you showcase some of your promos from like 60 Minutes, for example, for Wendy Williams, Starbucks. Did you ever think that you would be at this point, even though this is something that's come naturally to you, that you worked hard for? I mean, that's an amazing amount of just being out there and amazing accolades, Jason.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, look, I've been really blessed by God to be able to do this. I mean, this is a dream job for me and for probably a lot of people. So thanks to God for allowing me to do it. No, I never thought I was going to really be in this spot. Absolutely not. I thought I would just work in radio and then I'd do morning show someday, and then eventually I'd retire and be done. But once I started and got into it, I just thought, if I can just make a few extra bucks every month, I mean, this will be great. Even if I make $200, $300, $400 in a month or something, hey, that's extra money that I didn't have before, so this will be fantastic. And then when I started out, I started making, $200, $300, $400, $500 in a month, and I thought, hey, this is great. Then it just grew and grew and grew to where it was I was making more money in voiceover than I was in radio within about 2 to 3 years. And after that, you're like, this is fantastic. So I never thought I would be at that level, though. No, certainly not. But I'm happy to be where I am. And granted, voiceover, there's ebbs and flows. I mean, somebody that's on top this year in 5 years may not be on top anymore because styles change and the industry changes. So to still be involved after 20 years and be able to make a living doing this is really being blessed to be able to do it. So I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to talk to you. I'm happy to still call myself a voiceover actor.
Well, and it's an absolute pleasure having you on. Now, you mentioned about kind of adapt and change, if you will, or adapt and, just do what you can to stay in an ever-changing world. Do you ever worry that the style you do will ever become outdated, that you would have to change how you've done things for so long?
Yes, I do, certainly. But this is why we keep track of the trends in voiceover. And you say, well, how do you keep track? Is there a book they give you? I mean, is there a special website you go to track the trends? No, all you do is pay attention to TV, pay attention to radio, pay attention to YouTube for the pre-roll ads, see what voices are getting hired for things. Now, trends do change. When I started out, the hot thing was Gen X kind of cool guy voice, right? That was what was hot at the moment. If you remember back in the day, the old Carl's Jr. Hardee's ads, the guy just sounded like, kind of too cool for school, didn't really care. That was the hot voice, right? And at the time, that was what I did. So I was able to jump in and get jobs because I fit right in with what was popular. Now that changed, then it turned into, we want real people. We want things to be conversational. Well, I didn't really do that. So I had to work on that. And I had to adjust what I was doing. So long story, trying to shorten it, I pay attention when there's new trends that come around. I'm just trying to pay attention and seeing if there's a version of that I can do to still work.
What do you feel? Okay, how do I word this? because yes, the world is ever changing. I think you know what a good way I like looking at it is movie trailers. You and I were growing up. It was always, the in a world where the really deep voice, the really building up the suspense, and it was the same guy, but he did for every movie, and it was fantastic, because I mean it was just iconic. Don LaFontaine,
Yeah.
he was the one that did it, and
Matter of fact, hold on one second. Hang on one second.
all right, you're good. While you do that, folks, thank you so much for sticking around, tuning in to Roundabout Sports. We're having a fantastic time here with voiceover artist and St. Louis Blues television personality, Jason Rooney. He is going to show me something regarding Don LaFontaine.
I can't find it because we just moved, but I have a framed piece of copy that's a promo for The Simpsons that Don LaFontaine voiced, that during the session he wrote a little doodles and a little cartoon characters on there that I won in an auction for the Screen Actors Guild one year. So all that to say about Don, he was the original voiceover trailer guy. He was the guy. And unfortunately he passed, many years ago, but movie trailers really, they're not really a thing like they used to be. If you go to the theater now, you may see 3 or 4 or 5 trailers before your film. Maybe one might have actual voiceover in it. The others probably won't have any. So,
right. And the trailer, it segues into the whole thing where, the trailers are different than what they used to be because, Don's not there to provide his type of commentary to hype up things as it used to be.
Right, but you have other guys too. You've got guys that still do that now. They just do it differently, and movie trailers now really encompass not just what airs in the trailer in the theater, but really any commercial that airs for a movie, promoting a movie. That's still considered trailer work. So if you are watching TV and an ad for the new, Daredevil comes out, and at the end, they're like, Daredevil, rated R, in theaters July 4th. That's still a trailer read, but it's done for a commercial. It's not done in theaters. So that style still exists, and you still have guys that are fantastic at that. Ashton Smith is the number one guy for that. You've got John Bailey does some of that now. John Gary. I mean, there's still a host of guys, some younger, some a little bit older, that still do those reads that are just fantastic at it. And have been doing it too alongside Don since Don was alive doing it as well. So some of these guys are older and they've been around and doing it for a long time, but it's still there.
Yeah, and you look at there's always somebody that keeps the torch lit. It's the passing of the torch. And one thing I've also learned is, I mean, it goes without saying, like the old cartoons we grew up with and watching, the voice actors and the voiceovers for those were just absolutely fantastic. Mel Blanc, just one of the many great voiceover actors for these roles. But even one thing people don't realize, here's one, and this would have been a perfect show for me to wear my Tom and Jerry shirt I have. But, if you ever watch Tom and Jerry and you hear Tom scream, that's William Hanna from Hanna-Barbera. He's the one that did it. Yeah, William Hanna did all of the screams, the individual screams, and it was always different. From, they didn't hire a separate voiceover person.
Right.
And they had a character in there. There was another character in there that sounded just like Clarence Nash, who did Donald Duck, but it wasn't, which was, and I forget the person's name, but it made it all the more interesting. And that's the thing. And like once you enter one medium, you almost start to branch out into all of them, from what it seems like to me.
You can, certainly you can, but it seems like guys and girls will end up finding their niche and kind of staying in there. Sometimes they'll go a little bit back and forth, like me, commercial promo is my area where I work the most. Some people do animation, and that's kind of where they stay. And sometimes there's not a lot of back and forth between the two, really. Sometimes there is, but a lot of times you find what works and what you enjoy, and then you just go for that, and that's what happens. I mean, you got guys like in animation. I mean, shoot, Frank Welker, who's been around for 100 years. Frank Welker's the voice of Megatron for the original Transformers, the 1980s Transformers. He's the voice of Apu in Aladdin, in Disney's Aladdin, the original Aladdin.
Fred, from every single Scooby-Doo animated incarnation has been voiced by Frank Welker.
But there's guys like that are just unbelievably talented. They're just on another level, especially animation guys that you're just like, gosh, that guy is fantastic.
Yeah, it's always interesting learning more about the voiceovers and, you know, the ins and outs of, you know, being, and I guarantee, and I'm pretty much assuming it's a lot more convenient for you considering you built your own studio within your house.
Well, yeah. You know, it didn't used to be like this. When I started out, you had to go to a studio to do a session pretty much. And that's what I did for years until I built my own studio. But in the probably late 90s, the advent of ISDN service is what really allowed guys and girls to work from home. ISDN is, I don't have one handy I can show you, but it's a little box like this. It hooks up to 2 telephone lines, which gives you double the fidelity, so it's broadcast quality. So studios started getting them, and then some high-level talent started getting them, and then the talent could be dialed in their own studio to the recording studio. So all they had to do was wire it up with their microphone to make sure the sound was right, you know, that there was sound deadening and all that kind of stuff. And then they would just be dialed up when it was session time. They would read their lines into their mic, and it was recorded on the other end, and they were done. So it didn't used to be like that. Back in the day, you had to go to studio if you had sessions. But yeah, it's a lot more convenient now. It's a lot more open to more people because building a studio doesn't cost hundreds of thousands of dollars anymore.
Yeah, although then again, with inflation, it just might.
Sure. Yeah, that's true.
$20 doesn't get you the groceries it used to. I'll say that. I ask you this, Jason, and as we get close to wrapping things up here, first I want to say just how much of a pleasure it's been having you on. It's been so much fun. You've done so much work. You've told me. You've shared so many places, so many things, so many promos, commercials, your expensive residuals of 20 cents from NBC. You know, people always aspire to do more. Do you have a team, a place, a specific goal of what you want to do a voiceover for next? Or is it just whatever opportunity comes to you?
You know, not really, not a real particular idea. I just would like to do more of the things that I love to do. That's TV promos and you know, commercials too. But I love doing promos. It's just something that I really like. So I just like to do more of that. You know, like we talked about before, I've been blessed to do a lot of interesting and high-level stuff, which has been just great. But ultimately, you know, I still want to make money to feed my family and my kids, to pay my mortgage, and be able to continue to work. Really, that's what you want to do. I mean, in this industry too, I'm booked, you know, okay, so right now, today's Wednesday. Tomorrow I'm booked for a job at 12 o'clock, right? After that, I'm unemployed again, essentially. So it's somewhat of a difficult road because there's no guarantees, right? So sometimes your goal is just to stay employed and get some jobs so you can make some money and keep on keeping on. But a little bit bigger, you know, I'd like to work for more networks that I haven't worked before. You know, I'd like to do promos for Fox, which I've never been able to do. That would be a lot of fun. And just different new shows, maybe to do a drama, do a promo for a drama, which I've never, have I done promo for dramas? No. Reality shows, comedy, stuff like that. So there's things that I would like to check off my bucket list, but look, man, I'm lucky to be here. I'm lucky to be able to be a voice actor, to say that that's what I do. and not say, well, I do that, but I also have to work at the bar across the street, or I also have to whatever. No, I'm just thankful that I can do this as a job. So, praise God for that. And hopefully I can keep doing that for as long as I have breath in me.
Amen to that. Well, before we wrap it up, for the sake of for the sake of being able to help promote yourself, and I know you do so many different types of bookings. Where can people find you on social media and on the web to further the legend that is Jason Rooney?
Yeah. You can get in contact with me, jasonrooney.com. You can email me there if you'd like. Instagram is @RealJasonRooney. If you'd like to follow that, that'd be terrific. And I also teach voiceover classes in the St. Louis Community College network. So if you go to, I don't know what the site is, stlcc.com or .edu, whatever it is. And it's a continuing education class that I do usually once or twice a month. We do an intro to voiceover. So people that are interested in voiceover work, how to get into it, what does it take? We do a class on that, which is always a lot of fun. And I do some virtual coaching on the voiceactorstudio.com, which is basically an actor studio located in Las Vegas, which is owned and run by a good friend of mine named Melissa Moat. So I do a lot of work for her as well. So, and that's really just fun to reach out, connect with talent that are brand new, just trying to figure out the industry, what it's all about. Do they think they have what it can, what it takes to be successful, all those things. So yeah, I'm happy for anybody to reach out. I love when Blues fans reach out too. That's always fun to talk to those people. So feel free to reach out, follow me, and I'll follow you back.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap it up here this week on Roundabout Sports. As always, we put up the NAMI helpline at the end of every show, that being the National Alliance on Mental Illness. For that, you call 1-800-950-NAMI. That is 1-800-950-NAMI. The National Alliance on Mental Illness is the nation's largest grassroots nonprofit organization dedicated to building better lives for those who struggle with various forms of mental illnesses. And also, we always end the show by putting up the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. And for that, you dial 988. The line is open 24/7, 366 on leap years. Understand that you're never alone in this world. There is always somebody out there who loves you, who cares about you. We all go through our struggles, whether they seem minuscule or they are major. They don't have to be faced alone. You are just a phone call or a text message or email, anything. You are right there, and there's always somebody there to listen. And you could be the listening ears and watchful eyes for somebody else who's in need, that's near and dear to your heart. So I want to definitely thank James Knox, as always, for joining us this evening. I want to thank Jason Rooney for joining us this evening. Next week, we'll have Casey Thomas here on Roundabout Sports, St. Louis personality and sports fanatic. So I look forward to that. And as always, folks, I'm the Maestro Jeremy Karp, and life is a book full of empty pages just waiting to be written in. Make your lives worth reading. Good night, everybody.